So after you get your side cover, recoil cover off, and the clutch cover off, and honestly you don't even have to pull those off to do this, but they're already off. Anyways, this centerpiece, little cowling if you will, or whatever you want to call it, when it's on there, kind of just squeeze it on either side, pinch like that over here, pinch like that over here, fold it like a taco, I guess, if you will. Well, squeeze, and that will pop right out of there. And then you can get to your fuel lines, suction and return, and wire from your coil that runs up to the kill switch. So that's how you get into there. Things to note: this in here, I'll get the lighting is for you. That right there is the fuel inlet. So it comes through to that rib line through the housing up here. So that's where your fuel filter's on the end of that line. That's your pickup. Back in here, that's what feeds the carb. And then on the discharge side of the primer bulb under here, there's a hard line. And it runs underneath through the housing. Comes out, runs underneath that line right there, and then that rubber hose connects onto it, and it goes back into the tank. So that's your return. So that's your pickup into the carburetor through there. Return line after the primer bulb is there, up here, back into the tank. On the primer bulb, the long side, I don't know what you want to call it, port, whatever, is the discharge, and the shorter one is the suction. So this right here is going to go to your fuel tank vent, and this is going to go to the carburetor. So when you have it like so, the long side, the discharge, is what connects to that port that runs to the fuel tank vent. And then off this side, it also, this right here will connect onto that lower barb in there. So that'll discharge back to the tank and also vent it. Or basically, from the tank, if you will, that line that comes all the way back into here is now connected to said vent. So that's how it gets its vent. Or that's how it's vented, I should say. There is no like tank vent up out of the actual tank. It comes all the way back, and that's how it's vented. But anyway, so that's how that goes on, that orientation. And most of you probably are already going to have this all connected. So if you had to replace anything, you're just, pulling it off and putting it back on. But I'm starting from scratch here. So anyways, this whole piece goes onto that primer bulb like that. Discharge side on the top, suction side on the bottom. The suction side comes on the carburetor. The carburetor is in there. It's oriented like that. That suction tube, suction side, goes onto that barb right there. Okay. And this one back here, that's going to be your pickup from the tank, and that's what's going to go, it just presses right into that fuel line on the end when you put the carb on. So this piece right here is going to go down onto that little tiny barb. So I'll try and get it all plugged in and routed, and then we'll get you a new idea where it's all routed and goes. So just take that, feed it in through where the primer bulb would normally go, and then up through the plastic housing there. And you should be able to get both lines in if you... So then the way it sits in there, well, I don't know if you'll be able to see. Oh, there you go. So that little nub on there just presses on to that line, which is the return line. to the tank. You're getting the long version here because, okay, so that just pushed on there. Let's see if I found a flashlight here. Well, you can't tell. But anyways, that side piece pushed on to that barb that runs up to the tank. So once you had that in there, this would be like so. When you go to put your primer bulb on, your primer bulb would push, would push into that. Remember the long side on top again, discharge. Those two barbs, if you want to call them that, would push into those two holes on the fuel line. And it would also snap into place at the same time. But this one won't. Anyways, that's how that works though. And then this line with that funny little U-shaped coped looking piece on there, it goes on your fuel vent, tank vent. Just pushes, that barb just pushes on there. Well, if it wasn't a brand new line, it would just push on there. And that, in turn, just snaps into here. Like I said, most of you guys already know all this. It's kind of, this will only be for the people who are starting from scratch, which is probably far and few between. Anyway, so once you get all that hooked up like that, the only thing you're left with is this line right here. And that, again, remember, once you put your carburetor on, it actually goes over like that. Well, let's just shove it in there for kicks right now. So once your carburetor's on there, like so, that line goes onto this barb on the side. So when you pump that primer bulb, it pulls fuel from the tank in that inlet. It's sucking it through that, sucking it through the whole carb. Still is pulling here, pulls it, goes into the primer bulb, then back out of the primer bulb into that metal line and into the tank. So that's how the fuel line gets routed. I don't know if that'll help anybody or not, but I'm here, so that's what's going on.